You raised them with love and they walked away without looking back. You gave them your heart, your sleep, your strength. You raised them with trembling hands and unconditional love. And yet one day, they stopped calling. They pulled away. No explanation, no apology, just silence. This kind of pain isn't easy to speak about. The grief of being erased by someone you created. But you're not alone. You're not crazy for hurting, and you're not weak for still loving them. This video isn't about blaming. It's about healing. Because when your world revolves around someone who walks away, you're forced to find a new center. And sometimes, the journey back to yourself becomes the most sacred path of all. You gave them everything. Not just food and shelter. Not just clothes and education. You gave them yourself, your youth, your energy, your patience, even on the days when you had none left. You were tired, but you showed up. You were hurting, but you smiled for them. You had dreams, but you put them on hold so theirs could come true first. You stayed up through fevers and heartbreaks, school projects and growing pains. You clapped for them in every small victory and carried their burdens when they didn't even know they had any. And still, you gave. You listened when no one else did. You believed in them when even they doubted themselves. You made excuses for their behavior when others questioned it, because that's what love does, it protects. But now as they walk away, you wonder, did they ever see it? Did they ever feel it? This is the brutal silence of unreturned sacrifice, the space where your giving met their growing and then stopped being needed. Not because you weren't enough, but because they chose to forget what was once everything. You weren't asking for trophies or applause, just a moment, a thank you, a call, a message that says, I remember. But that moment never came, and here you are trying to understand how something so unconditional could feel so unrewarded. But let me remind you of something. Love is not a transaction. It's not given for the purpose of being repaid. It's a gift, and you gave it fully, without holding back. That speaks more about your character than their silence ever will. You see, some children grow up and forget the hands that held them steady. Not out of malice, but out of distance, ego, or a need to prove they've outgrown dependence. And sometimes in that pursuit of independence, they confuse detachment with strength, forgetting that even the strongest trees owe their roots everything. So no, your love wasn't wasted. It built a human. It built strength. It built potential. You just didn't expect the price would be their absence. But that's not your shame to carry. The world doesn't often speak about the heartbreak of a parent left behind, especially when no visible war was fought, no words exchanged, just a slow fade. But we're speaking it now, and if no one's ever told you this, let me be the first. You did more than enough. Not every story gets the ending it deserves, but that doesn't make your love any less powerful. In fact, it might be the most sacred thing you've ever done. Providence, 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 Trudy. It never happens all at once. There's no loud goodbye, no dramatic exit, just quiet. A pause that turns into distance, a distance that turns into silence. And before you even realize it, something that once felt warm and alive begins to fade like a photograph left too long in the sun. At first it's little things, a delayed reply, a forgotten birthday, a sense that you're suddenly inconvenient. You tell yourself, they're busy. It's just a phase. You give them grace because that's what parents do. But deep inside, something begins to ache. You remember the days when they used to tell you everything, the random calls, the texts filled with silly jokes or deep questions, the way they once leaned on you like you were the only safe place in the world. But now they've built walls where you once had doors. You start to notice the subtle edits, how they talk to others with warmth, yet speak to you in cold facts. The way they used to say, I miss you, and now, nothing. No updates, no check-ins, just a slow disappearance masked as adulthood. And the worst part? There's no explanation, no confrontation, just this unspoken shift that leaves you questioning everything. Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Not enough? You search through memories like a detective looking for a clue, but there's no trail, no single moment that explains the change, only the unbearable weight of what's no longer there. That's how emotional distance works. It doesn't scream, it withdraws. It pretends it's normal while hollowing out the relationship from the inside. Until one day, you're standing in a connection that still exists in name, but not in presence, and you're left mourning something that technically hasn't ended, but clearly isn't alive. This is the grief no one talks about. The grief of being erased slowly, quietly by someone you never imagined would forget you. But here's what you must remember. This shift, though it hurts, is not a reflection of your failure. It's a reflection of their choices, their journey, their unresolved emotions, and the space they think they need to find themselves. You can't control how someone grows. You can only control how you stand in the storm with grace, with dignity, and with the deep knowing that love offered sincerely is never wasted, even if it's not returned the way you hoped. Because truthfully, some shifts are silent, but they speak volumes. There was a time when they couldn't take a single step without you. You were their world, their shelter, their guide, their answer to every problem. From tying their shoelaces to calming their fears at night, you were the person they instinctively reached for. And every time they needed you, something in you felt anchored, like your existence made sense. But then slowly the tide began to change. They started making their own choices, pulling away, becoming more independent. At first it seemed like growth, something to be proud of, and you were proud until you realized they were no longer looking back, no longer asking, no longer including you in their becoming. They stopped needing you. And with that, something inside you quietly cracked. This isn't just about physical distance. It's about emotional removal. It's about watching someone you raised, someone who once clung to your every word, now treat your presence as optional, even burdensome. And it hits harder than you expected. Because for years, your entire identity was built around being their parent. Not just in title, but in purpose. Your life revolved around their needs, their meals, their emotions, their dreams. And in giving so much of yourself, you forgot that one day your role would shrink, and no one would prepare you for that hollow space. It feels like vanishing, not from the world, but from their world. And in that quiet, a storm begins to swirl inside. Who am I if I'm no longer needed? What happens to all the love I still have to give? This is the identity crisis no one speaks of. The moment when parenting becomes less about giving and more about letting go, not by choice but by necessity. And it's terrifying, because it feels like your usefulness has expired, like your presence has outlived its value. You find yourself offering advice they no longer want, care they no longer accept, love they no longer recognize. But here's the deeper truth. Their need for you was never the measurement of your worth. You were not just a provider of solutions. You were a foundation. And foundations don't vanish when the house is built. They remain unseen yet essential. They may not lean on you like before. They may not call you when life feels heavy, but none of that erases the truth of who you've been, and still are. You were their beginning, their compass, their safe place. And though they may not say it out loud, they still carry your presence in every step they take forward, even if they never look back. There's a moment some parents never forget. Not because it was loud, but because it was so quiet. No slammed doors, no final words, just a subtle shift, a growing silence. One day they were there, laughing in your kitchen, texting you about the smallest things, needing your approval for even the smallest decisions, and then they weren't. Maybe it was a move across the country, maybe it was an argument that went too far, or maybe, and this is what hurts most, there was no big event at all. Just a slow, steady unraveling of connection until you realized they had emotionally checked out long before they physically walked away, and you were still standing in the same place, holding space, holding love, holding questions. You kept asking yourself, was I too much or not enough? You replayed moments over and over, scanning for the exact second it all changed. But the truth is, the shift was never one moment. It was a series of subtle choices made quietly until the final silence roared. It's not just the absence that wounds you, it's the lack of explanation. They didn't offer closure. They didn't try to untangle what went wrong. They just left. And somehow their silence spoke more than any goodbye ever could. You remember the last phone call that felt distant, the unanswered message that still sits read, but not replied, the holiday dinner that never got planned. And each of these moments became little tombstones for the relationship you once had. It hurts, not just in your heart, but in your identity. Because you raised them with love, you built your life around their happiness, you sacrificed without hesitation, and now you're left to mourn a connection that still exists, but only on your side. Some say it's just a phase, others say they'll come back one day. But in this moment, you're not thinking about one day, you're thinking about today, the day they walked away, and how it changed something fundamental in you. You question your worth, you question your parenting, but most of all, you question your lovability, because if someone you raised, someone you loved into existence, can leave you behind without a backward glance, what does that say about you? But the truth, their departure does not define your devotion. It reflects their journey, not your failure. They are finding themselves, maybe in messy ways, maybe through distance, but your love was never wasted. It wasn't invisible. It wasn't forgotten. They walked away, but they walk with the love you gave, whether they admit it or not, whether they recognize it yet or not. And maybe, just maybe, they'll realize, the farther they go, the more they'll miss what was always constant, you. When someone you love walks away without explanation, the silence doesn't stay outside you, it echoes within. Suddenly, every memory becomes evidence. Every decision you made as a parent is re-examined under a harsh emotional microscope. You ask yourself, was I too soft, too strict, too emotional, too absent, too involved? You replay the early years, the sleepless nights, the scraped knees, the way you defended them in rooms where they weren't even present. You remember cheering the loudest, crying the hardest, hoping the deepest. And now, you question if any of it mattered. You wonder if your love became invisible somewhere along the way. If your efforts, the ones that nearly broke you, were somehow interpreted as not enough, or worse, as too much. You ask yourself if maybe you should have said less or more, given more freedom or more structure, listened harder, let go sooner, held on tighter. This is the spiral. You search for the one moment you could rewind and fix, but healing doesn't work that way, because most wounds don't come from just one cut. They come from small, unspoken misunderstandings that pile up like dust in a room no one's entered in years. So you try to fix it all, not with them, because they're gone, but inside yourself. You think, if I become better, maybe they'll come back. If I punish myself enough, maybe the pain will feel justified. If I replay everything long enough, maybe I'll find the answer. But here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes there is no clear answer. Sometimes people walk away not because you failed, but because they're fighting their own storms. And in their pain, they distance themselves from the very love that could help them heal. You questioning yourself doesn't prove guilt. It proves how deeply you care. Only a loving heart obsesses this hard. Only a soul that gave everything is afraid it wasn't enough. You didn't fail them. You loved them the best way you knew how, with what you had, in the moment you had it. And if they can't see that now, it doesn't mean they never will. But the healing can't begin by tearing yourself apart. You don't need to rewrite the past to deserve peace. You need to recognize that you did your part, even if they've forgotten. And that's where your healing begins, not in fixing the silence between you, but in softening the storm inside you. When the pain becomes too heavy to carry, you reach out, you confide in someone, a friend, a relative, maybe even a therapist, hoping they'll understand the ache that never leaves your chest. But what do you hear? They're adults now. You have to let them live their life. They'll come around eventually. Just move on. And just like that, your grief is minimized. The depth of your heartbreak is brushed off like a phase, as if mourning a child who's still alive but emotionally gone is somehow less than real loss. But it isn't. This kind of pain has no funeral, no rituals, no closure. It's the slow ache of being erased from someone you built your life around. You don't get sympathy cards for estrangement. You get silence. You get judgment. You get advice from people who've never had to beg the universe to bring their child back, not physically but emotionally. They say let go, but they don't realize you never held on out of control. You held on because love doesn't come with an off switch. You didn't stay up late hoping for a message out of desperation. You stayed up because that silence hurts louder than any noise you've ever heard. And while the world might applaud detachment, you're still there holding memories like old photographs, worn, bent, but sacred. Because letting go of someone you raised feels like letting go of a part of yourself. But here's what society often gets wrong. Letting go doesn't mean erasing love. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Letting go means releasing the expectation that they will return on your timeline, in your way, with the apology you deserved. It means choosing peace in the face of silence. It means grieving what is without pretending it doesn't hurt. It means recognizing that your pain is valid, even if no one else gives you permission to feel it. You don't have to move on. You're allowed to move through this. You're allowed to cry on days that should have been filled with celebration. You're allowed to remember without bitterness and love without condition. So the next time someone tells you, just let it go, know this: they may not understand your storm, but that doesn't mean your rain isn't real. And healing doesn't begin with suppression. It begins with honesty, the kind that says, yes, this hurts. Yes, I still love them. And yes, I'm still standing. This pain goes beyond a broken heart. It reaches deeper into a place no one sees but you feel every single day. It's not just emotional, it's spiritual, because this wasn't just your child walking away. It was a piece of your identity, dissolving in front of your eyes. Who are you when the very person you nurtured, protected, and prayed over now treats your presence like a burden? When the soul you once rocked to sleep now pretends you don't exist? That's not just rejection. That's existential disorientation. You gave so much of yourself, and now you're left wondering if it even mattered. Did the hugs mean nothing? Did your sacrifices fade into the background of their memory? Were you ever truly seen, or were you just a chapter they outgrew? These questions don't live in your head. They haunt your spirit. Because parenting isn't just something you do, it's something you become. And when that role is suddenly taken, distanced, or dishonored, it rips through your very sense of self. You begin to question everything: your worth, your choices, even your purpose. It's a spiritual scar because the wound isn't visible, but it changes the way your soul breathes, and the world doesn't talk about it. There are no healing ceremonies for estranged parents, no spiritual guides for those who are grieving someone who still walks this earth, but is emotionally gone. And yet you carry on, because even when your heart broke, your soul whispered, keep going. Even when the silence screamed louder than any words, something deeper within you said, you are still whole. Yes, it hurts, but you are not your pain. You are the spirit surviving beneath it. You are the soul that continues to love, even when that love is no longer returned. This scar may never fully fade, but it will teach you. It will stretch your understanding of what it means to love without condition, to give without entitlement, to stand, even when nothing feels steady beneath your feet. This isn't the end of you. This is the revealing of you. Because the greatest heartbreaks don't just break us. They break open something deeper, the layers of our identity we never knew we had to reclaim. So take a breath, not to forget the pain, but to remember, you were always more than the role they left behind. And this scar on your spirit, it's not weakness, it's sacred proof that you loved fully and survived anyway. It's easy to paint them as villains, to replay the moment they turned away, shut the door, or stopped returning your calls and feel the sting of betrayal. Because in that silence, it's hard not to hear you weren't enough. But sometimes the truth is more complicated. Not all who leave are cruel. Not all silence is hatred. And not every departure is rejection. Sometimes they walk away, not because they stopped loving you, but because they don't know how to love themselves yet. They're not always running from you. They're running from a version of themselves they can't face when they're around you. From expectations they feel crushed beneath. From unhealed wounds that twist love into pressure. They may be carrying traumas they've never voiced, fears they don't even understand, or guilt that festers each time they see your eyes, because they know they're not the person you hoped they'd become. It doesn't make the pain fair. It doesn't make the silence okay, but it offers something rare in heartbreak: perspective. Empathy doesn't excuse the damage. It doesn't mean you stop hurting. It simply means you stop carrying the weight of blame. Sometimes distance is survival, not punishment. Sometimes pulling away is how people breathe, figure themselves out, or avoid drowning in the expectations of who they should be. And yes, maybe they handled it poorly. Yes, maybe they could have spoken, explained, or honored you better. But growth doesn't always look graceful. Sometimes it looks like mess, retreat, confusion. And while you may have been the casualty of their process, you were never the cause of their emptiness. Read that again. You did your best, you gave your love, you showed up. And that matters, whether they acknowledge it today or 10 years from now or never. You see, the human soul is complicated. People outgrow themselves before they outgrow others. And sometimes the people who seem the coldest are just trying to survive the fires inside them. So what do? You forgive. Not to let them off the hook, but to set yourself free. You let go, not of love, but of the need to be the hero in someone else's healing story. And you choose peace, because carrying anger for someone who's lost only pulls you further into their storm. Not all who leave are bad. Some are just broken. And sometimes the deepest act of spiritual strength is loving from afar and letting go without hate. This kind of pain, it's not surface level. It's not just about who walked away. It's about what it awakened inside you. You see, when someone you raised turns their back, the wound slices far deeper than ordinary heartbreak, because it wasn't just a relationship, it was identity. You didn't just love them, you built them. You sacrificed. You stayed up through sickness, worry, school nights, and broken dreams. You gave the best of yourself when you barely had anything left. And when they leave, not with a hug, not with a thank you, but with silence or coldness, it feels like they're not just rejecting you, they're rejecting everything you were to them. Why does it hurt so much? Because it pokes at the child inside you. The part of you that's always wanted to be seen, appreciated, loved without conditions. The inner child that longed to matter and thought that if they just gave enough, proved enough, loved enough, they would never be abandoned. But now that part of you is screaming, wasn't I enough? After everything I did, how could they just forget me? This is not just parental pain, this is core wound pain. The wound of invisibility, of feeling like your love was supposed to protect you from abandonment and it didn't. It hurts because you expected return. Not in money, not in favors, but in presence, in calls, in thoughtfulness, in care, in remembrance. And when that doesn't come, when they forget birthdays, when they don't check in, when they roll their eyes at your concern, your heart asks, did they ever really love me at all? But here's the truth, and it may sting. Love, when offered with expectation of return, becomes an unspoken transaction. And while your intentions were pure, your soul was hoping, praying that the love you gave would guarantee that they'd never walk away. But love can't guarantee outcomes, not even the most selfless love. Not even a mother's or a father's. It hurts because you're grieving more than just a person. You're grieving an idea, a hope, a story you told yourself about how life would go. And that grief deserves space. It deserves compassion. But it also deserves freedom. This pain isn't a sign that you failed. It's a sign that you loved deeply, that your heart was open, that you were real. And while real love doesn't always come full circle, it always leaves a mark on the soul it touched. So let it hurt, but let it teach you too, that even the deepest pain doesn't define your worth. We grow up believing that love means holding on, that if you love someone, you stay, you show up, you call, you remain present. But what if love at its highest form isn't about staying at all? What if real love, spiritually mature love, knows when to let go? This isn't the kind of message your heart wants to hear when it's broken, but this is the truth that sets it free. Love without attachment is the kind of love that says, I release you even if it hurts me. I let you walk your path, even if it leads away from mine. I hold space for your journey, even if I'm not part of it anymore. It sounds noble, but it's not easy, because we are wired to grip, to cling, to believe that love equals proximity. We think if they loved me, they'd still be here. If I mattered, they wouldn't have left. But that's not always true. You can love someone deeply and still need distance. You can miss someone every single day and still choose not to chase them. You can pray for someone's healing and still protect your own peace. That's love without attachment. It's not cold, it's not bitterness, it's maturity. It's soul-level wisdom. Because when you begin to love like this, you stop measuring your value by who stays. You stop bargaining with your dignity. You stop believing that love must always come wrapped in constant presence. Sometimes the most sacred love we give is the love we never get to witness bloom. It's the seed we planted that we may never see rise. But it was still love, still pure, still real. You raised them with love, and now they've walked away. And here's what they may never understand. You still love them. You always will. But now you love them without needing them to love you back. That's not defeat. That's spiritual elevation. Attachment says, I need you here or I'll fall apart. Awakened love says, I set you free and I will still be whole. And if they return, let it be a reunion, not a rescue. Let it be a choice, not a compensation, because your worth was never tied to their presence. Redefining love doesn't mean you love less. It means you love wiser, with openness, with boundaries, with deep compassion, and zero expectation. This is how healing begins, not by forcing reconnection, but by finding peace in loving, even if it's from a distance. There's a wound beneath the wound. You thought the heartbreak was about them walking away, but deep down it awakened something even older, a silence you've carried since before you ever had a child. The truth is, before you were a parent, you were a child. And that child, the one inside you, didn't always get the love they needed. They were taught to prove their worth, to earn affection, to stay small, to be accepted. So you promised yourself, when I have children, I'll love them so much they'll never feel what I felt. And you did. You loved with everything you had. You gave what you never received. But when they walked away, it didn't just break your heart, it confirmed your oldest fear, that I'm still not enough to be chosen. This is where healing truly begins. Not with trying to fix the outer relationship, but with turning inward to meet the unparented parts of yourself. The wounded child within you doesn't need your grown-up achievements. They don't need validation from your kids. They need you. They need your attention, your tenderness, your promise that they don't have to earn love anymore. You are not failing as a parent. You are waking up as a whole human. And sometimes, that awakening starts with grief. The grief of giving everything and still feeling unseen. The grief of realizing that no matter how much love you pour into others, you can't bypass the emptiness inside yourself. But here's the medicine. You can now give to yourself what no one gave to you. Hold yourself the way you once held your child. Speak to your inner self the way you soothed their cries. Be the nurturer you once tried to become, not for them but for you. Because healing the parent within means this. You stop expecting others, even your children, to fix your deepest ache. You stop waiting to be chosen and choose yourself instead. You stop defining your success by who stays or who calls or who says thank you. And in that shift, something sacred happens. You rise from being a parent in pain to becoming a soul in peace. You start loving from fullness, not emptiness. You start offering presence, not performance. You begin to feel whole, not because they returned, but because you returned to yourself. This is the quiet revolution, not fixing them, but healing you. Hit key. You keep asking yourself, what did I do wrong? You replay every moment, every decision, every sacrifice, wondering where it all went sideways. But what if you're asking the wrong question? What if this pain isn't proof of failure, but proof that you loved with your whole heart? Because love, real love, it doesn't come with guarantees. It doesn't come with promises of appreciation, of loyalty, of staying. It comes with risk. The risk of being forgotten. The risk of not being enough. The risk of being left, even after giving everything. But you chose love anyway. You didn't hold back. You didn't ration your heart. You gave your best, your patience, your nights, your years. You loved them in moments when you were empty. You showed up when it was hardest to. You carried them when no one carried you. That is not failure. That is courage. That is grace in action. They may not see it now. They may never understand the depth of what you gave, but that does not erase the beauty of your love. Love, even when unseen, still matters. Love, even when it's walked away from, still transforms the one who gave it. You became more because of that love, more gentle, more resilient, more awake. And yes, maybe your love didn't look perfect. Maybe it came with your own wounds, your own limitations, your own broken pieces stitched together. But even broken love is still love. You didn't fail. You felt, you gave, you believed, you stood in the fire of uncertainty and chose love again and again. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you whole. So let the world say what it wants. Let silence sit where gratitude never came. Let them go if they choose to. Because your love was real, and that means something. Even if the world never applauds it, even if they never return, it mattered. You mattered. You're not holding the ashes of failure. You're holding the sacred remains of a love that was never small, a love that tried, a love that stood, a love that refused to quit. You didn't lose because they left. You won because you stayed loving in a world that forgets how. So breathe. Let your soul unclench. Let the shame slide off your shoulders. You didn't fail. You loved, and love, real, raw, imperfect love, is never ever wasted. Letting go. Two small words that feel like tearing away pieces of your own soul. You gave them everything. Memories, moments, years, and now you're being asked to let it go? But listen closely. Letting go does not mean you never cared. It does not mean you're giving up on love or that you're turning cold. Letting go means choosing peace over pain that recycles itself. It means releasing the grip of a story that keeps cutting you, even when the pages no longer turn. You can grieve and still let go. You can cry for what was, ache for what should have been, and still release what is now only hurting you. Because holding on to what's already gone, that's not strength. That's slow self-destruction masked as loyalty. You're not letting go of the love. You're letting go of the attachment to how it should have looked. You're letting go of the illusions, the unmet expectations, the silent hopes that keep reopening your wounds. This isn't about bitterness. This is about liberation. Detachment isn't cold, it's clarity. It says, I love deeply, but I will not lose myself trying to hold on to someone who's already let go. It's learning to honor your emotions without being ruled by them. It's understanding that peace is not found in clinging, but in releasing what you cannot control. You can still love them from a distance. You can still wish them well. You can still carry the beautiful parts of what you had without letting it control your present. Letting go means you choose your healing now. You choose the life that still wants you. You make space for rebirth, for rediscovery, for the version of you that no longer needs to prove their worth through someone else's acceptance. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. You're not giving up. You're stepping out of the emotional prison you never deserved to live in. Letting go is loving yourself enough to stop negotiating your value with people who stopped listening. So breathe, unclench your fists. The past has done what it came to do. Now it's your turn to walk forward lighter, freer, more alive. Not because they came back, but because you came back to yourself. Letting go isn't the end of the story. It's the chapter where you become whole again. If no one has told you this before, you didn't fail. You didn't love too much. You didn't care too deeply. You didn't break yourself by being soft in a world that taught you to harden. You were the lesson, not the mistake. You taught love, even if it was never returned the way you hoped. You showed up, even when no one clapped for your effort. You stayed, even when your presence was taken for granted. You were the quiet anchor in the storm, the warmth in the cold, the steady hand when everyone else was shaking. So if they walked away, if they forgot your sacrifices, if they rewrote the story without you in it, that doesn't erase your chapter. It doesn't diminish your worth. It doesn't define your legacy. Sometimes people don't realize the value of your love until it's no longer being given freely. And even then, that realization is theirs to carry, not yours to wait for. Your healing does not depend on their return. Your peace does not require their apology. Your growth does not need their permission. You get to rise now. You get to let go. You get to live, not as someone broken by what happened, but as someone shaped by the truth they chose to ignore. You were never too much. You were never naive. You were pure. And purity in a hardened world is often misunderstood as weakness. But don't let that confusion become your cage. The version of you that kept choosing love, compassion, and hope, even in the face of silence, that version of you was rare, sacred, and still lives inside you. So take a deep breath, place your hand on your heart, and whisper this: I am not waiting to be chosen anymore. I already am. You were not sent here to break under the weight of someone else's rejection. You were sent here to rise in the light of your own remembrance. You are not what they left. You are what remains and what grows from here. Let this be your turning point. Let this be the beginning of your next chapter. One written not in pain, but in power. Not in bitterness, but in truth. You were the lesson, the blessing, the mirror. And now it's time to become that for yourself. If this message found your heart today, you're not alone. There are others healing silently just like you, and this space is for all of us. So breathe deeply, heal bravely, and if you're ready for the next chapter of your journey, subscribe, stay with us, because your story is far from over, and your light is only beginning to rise. This message is for the mothers, fathers, givers, and silent healers, the ones who feel forgotten, but were never invisible to the truth. If you like it, hit the like and subscribe me.